Welcome to Smart in the City, the Babel podcast where we bring together top actors in the smart city arena, sparking dialogues and interactions around the stakeholders and themes most prevalent for today's citizens and tomorrow's generations. I am your host, Tallinn Shimizu, and I hope you will enjoy this episode and gain knowledge and connections to accelerate the change for a better urban life. Smart in the City is brought to you by Babel Smart Cities. We enable processes from research and strategy development to co-creation and implementation. To learn more about us, please visit the Babel platform at babel-smartcities.eu. So, welcome back to another episode of the Smart in the City podcast. I'm sitting in Babel's hometown of Stuttgart at the world-renowned Urban Future Conference, where we are a proud media partner. Before we get started, I want to send the organizers a big thank you for having us as media partners and getting the opportunity to record with so many great guests. In addition to this being an Urban Future episode, we also have a really great partner, which is helping us connect Spanish cities with other cities in Europe to create more dialogue between the cities. They are, of course, RESI, the national network of smart cities in Spain. So representing RESI from the Spanish side, I have a really incredible guest today, Ernesto Faubal. He's the head of Smart City Office at the municipality of Valencia. Welcome, Ernesto.
Hi, thank you for inviting me to this session.
Yeah, absolutely my pleasure. And with him today, he has a great counterpart here. The guest of the hour with us is none other than Vladimir Svet. He's the Deputy Mayor of Environment, Urban Construction and Mobility at Tallinn City Government.
Hello, nice to have you here. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so lovely to have you here. So another reason why this episode is going to be a really fantastic one is because Tallinn is currently the European Green Capital for 2023, and Valencia has been awarded this title for next year. Yes. So you definitely have to keep listening to see these perspectives. So before I get into the main conversation, I like to have a little teaser question. I was wondering, you guys actually got the chance to talk last night over dinner and some drinks too. So I'm really glad that you had that opportunity, because maybe you have a better idea for this question. And it is, what do you think you both have in common?
So I think the thing that we have in common, and we also have in common, I believe, with a lot of cities across Europe, is the will to make people happier. Because, you know, in the end, when we talk about we talk about the carbon problem, when we talk about mobility, when we talk about digitalization, we actually sometimes forget what is the final aim. Why are we doing that? And I think that so different cities like Valencia and Tallinn, situated in almost opposing parts of Europe on different sides, still I think the overall goal is the same. And the second thing I think that we have in common is that we respect green territories in the city, and actually for us Valencia is a big inspiration on how to create this kind of big linear parks that create sort of a green backbone for the whole city infrastructure.
Yeah, for us it's a very good thing to have this green capital after you, because for sure we will have the opportunity to learn from your experience. And I fully agree with you that your approach, that at the end we have a common goal, that we have some enablers, some tools that could make the big goal to be achieved, but we have different roadmaps to go there. But at the end we have similar problems. We have the goal of reducing the carbon footprint. We want to make the mobility more sustainable. We want a better quality of air and things like that are closely related to this Green Capital Award achievement.
Yeah, so lots of things in common, actually, I'm hearing. So that's good, even though you're on opposite sides of Europe. So
Different sides. I
diff-
would not say
okay,
opposite.
not
Yeah,
opposite sides,
that's a good
different
word,
sides of
yeah.
Europe. Yeah, important point. Good. So Vladimir, I'd love to ask you a little bit about your background. What can you tell us about your story, your journey that led you to where you are today?
Actually, I'm a lawyer, not an urbanist or a spatial planner or something like that. But I was an active student back at the times, involved with youth parties, with some kind of youth councils, stuff like that. Participative democracy on youth level, and that's why when I finished university, I went to work actually as a lawyer for the children and family rights to the office of the Estonian Ombudsman, where I dealt with basic rights and try to help people who were somehow lost in the system, especially with these kind of topics. But then the party I was active in before that won local elections, and they wanted somebody, so to say, fresh, but with some kind of basic experience. So they invited me. And this is how my political career began, like 5.5 years ago. I was a district elder or a district governor in a few districts of Tallinn. And eventually, after last election, the guy who was doing the job I'm doing now decided to retire, and somebody had to do the job. So they they invited me. But yeah, actually, you could say that I'm a career politician. But my plan B is to become a lawyer again someday.
Oh,
yes.
going back to a lawyer. Yeah, sounds good. Really interesting story. So, Ernesto, same to you. I want to hear all about your background.
Well, I'm a computer engineer, and I have been working in the municipality for 28 years. I have been also a part-time teacher at the university. I have developed most of my career in the municipality in urban planning department. It has helped me to understand better the process of urban planning and things like that. And my last years, I have been coordinating a smart city project with some focus on some issues such as energy efficiency, mobility, obviously ICT, and with a lot of actions from a social perspective. And since September, I'm the head of the Smart City Office in the municipality of Valencia.
Very nice. Very interesting backgrounds to both of you. That's one of my favorite questions, actually, because I'm like, oh, really? You were a lawyer? Like, well, how did this happen? Like all these things. So, Vladimir, can you tell me about what's going on in Tallinn? Like, give the people some stories. What's there, some exciting projects that's going on? What's the focus? What are some initiatives? What's happening?
Well, a lot of things are happening in Tallinn this year. It is partially a coincidence that in the very year when we are the green capital, we are also bringing to life a number of huge investment projects connected to development of public transport and transforming public space and creating better streets. But the problem is that in process, it all means construction, a lot of construction. I mean, people in Stuttgart, I think, are used to big, long construction sites.
No, really?
But, well, a big part of the city center now is dug up and is not a good place to drive through, especially with a car. Which maybe is sort of a good teaser for the overall direction we are moving to, because there are a lot of people who say like, oh my God, I mean, I cannot use the car. I have to take the bus, or I have to go on foot. I have to take the bicycle. And we're like, yes, that was the initial idea, though we didn't want to get there thanks to the construction process itself. But so yes, we have a lot of things going on. We have new protective areas being created in the city because Tallinn has a lot of forests actually on its territory, and even a swamp. I mean, we are now trying to move on from just dealing with public green land to start protecting also the private one. And of course, I mean, that's a big challenge for us, because if a person owns a land and somebody says, now you cannot build here anymore, he's not very happy about that. But I think we're now in the process of transition, in the process of going from a city where you could not imagine living without a car to a city where a car is just only one alternative.
Yes, we share this perspective also. But if I have to say things about what's happening in Valencia, I could start with we have changed the color of the local government 2 weeks ago. So it's a period in a way of uncertainty.
So you have a new boss.
Yeah. Yes, this week, in fact. So this week was announced the councillor for the area in which I'm working in. But we are confident on that the most relevant things will have a continuity. But obviously we have this issue now to deal with. But in last years we have been in a process of change. We have changed the model of mobility, as Vladimir has said. The mobility is much more sustainable now than a few years ago. It's much easier to ride a bike than to drive a car, because a lot of bike lanes have been built, and we have as you have mentioned before, this green linear park that is it's a very relevant infrastructure for our city that at the same time connects and divides the city in two parts, north and south. But it connects because you can go with your bike or your e-scooter and ride it all across the city and then go to one or another place. Apart from that, we have had different relevant issues that in the last years. For example, we were World Design Capital last year. We have been 2 years finalists of eCapital Awards, so the European Capital of Innovation. Last year, Smart Tourism European Capital. So a lot of things, lots of capitals. And the final one, maybe the most relevant one, has been the Green Capital. So we are very proud of it. And I would like to mention some issues that have been very relevant for achieving that. But we could go on with the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wanted to ask you, what does the European Green Capital actually mean? Is it just a title? Like, what does it actually give the city? Maybe Vladimir knows a bit about this as being the current one.
Better than me, because
you're not
in fact,
yet.
you are.
Yeah.
We are waiting for that.
But well, I think we can talk a lot about bike lanes and greenery and trees and like different events happening around that. When I think about what does Green Capital title give to me as a politician, as a citizen of the city, then I would say that it is means of saving time, because in this race for reducing our carbon footprint, time is crucial. We can say that yes, these decisions, the changes we have to make, we can make them in 5, in 10, in 15 years, but that will not be enough. And that would lead to the situation where the harm has been done even more and we have to run even more faster. So if there are means of saving time for hard decisions, and being a green capital, it's all about hard decisions, and cutting your carbon footprint is all about hard decisions, then the title of Green Capital saves us time that would otherwise would go to making these decisions. I like to say that it saved us one political cycle, like a 4-year time that would take otherwise to discuss, debate, elaborate these kind of questions that we need to decide. And now, as we are the Green Capital, we have no choice but to do these kind of decisions. And it is a very strong argument in the inner discussion. So I think for people who will come to Tallinn, it will be about events, it will be about the public space that is changing, but the deep influence is the overall understanding that if we are the green capital, we must, decide this, and here are the decisions.
Yeah, for us, it's a kind of alignment of strategies because we're also one of the 112 mission cities for being carbon neutral in 2030. It's a very ambitious goal. And all these things that have to have the relation with this green capital obviously will affect this, will have an impact on this main goal. In fact, most of the policies that the local government has at this moment are oriented to this ambitious goal of being carbon neutral in 2030. And for that, even though we haven't started yet being green capital, we have focused our candidacy in some facts, both previous and current. So because we have mentioned before the transformation of the old riverbed into a linear park. Now, as far as I know, is the longest linear park in Europe with 12 kilometers. So it's very nice, and so it's one of the main assets of the city. And current, because we have turned some squares into pedestrian that used to be roundabouts for cars and buses, and now it's more charmful for being there, have a walk, or for pedestrians, much better.
Yeah, very nice. Can you talk, Vladimir, a little bit more about what have been some of those decisions or like those things that you just had to do because you were the European Green Capital? What were those actions?
Well, I think there are two types of decisions. One of them are aimed at directly cutting the carbon footprint. For example, the decisions to invest in public transport and to start this, hard walk from diesel and gas to carbon neutral ways of transport that we are now in the process of signing our first contract for the electric buses to come into the streets. The decision to start creating new tram lines, and one of them is now being built in the center of the city. The decision of banning one-time cutlery on big events and replacing it with reusables, which is now a big. It has been a big decision that created a lot of controversy. Big investments in also bicycle infrastructure and renewing our street and widening the possibilities of mobility for people who move on foot, for people who cycle, and squeezing the car space, especially in the city center. These decisions that I think are now being made by all of the cities, they are always nice to present at a conference or in an interview, but politically, usually they are very hard to drag through. And these were the ones that we have to make, and we have what is waiting. I think one of the big topics is the topic of renovation, which is one of the biggest problem in Tallinn, in Estonia, and Eastern Europe, because we have this kind of a lot of Soviet time housing that is very ineffective and needs to be reconstructed. And also one of the big things that we have done is that now we are creating a new private venture together with the company responsible for the district heating and cooling in Tallinn, in order to develop this whole energy system and not only provide the usual service, but also to start producing energy from wastewater and from seawater with this kind of, well, for us, it's like a cutting edge technologies, but these technologies are actually widely used in several cities and countries of Europe. The problem is that for a small country like Estonia, this all requires a big amount of investments. But that's one thing. That's all the usual suspects that you have to go through when you are trying to cut your emissions. The other decisions that were made are connected to the strategical way of how we see the city, with the new strategy that we have adopted, with the reforming of the city government by creating a holistic approach. We call it with the strategy center, which is like a body higher than any city department that is responsible for overseeing how the city is moving towards fulfilling the strategy 2035 that we have. So it's also about how the city functions as a system, and I would say that the latter one is even maybe harder than the first. Some certain decisions, some certain investments.
Yeah. By the way, we are testing a pilot of a wave energy converter from get the energy from the waves of the sea, of the Mediterranean Sea. In Valencia, in Matchup project, we have carried out an action related to that. If we talk about controversial or difficult decisions, I think that most of them are related to mobility. Because if we talk about energy, so who is going to be against installing a PV plant in municipal buildings? Nobody. So it's their decisions easy to be taken. But if we talk about mobility, some actions, some decisions could be controversial. For example, we have a challenge for this year. It's the implementation of the low emission areas that cities in Europe with more than 50,000 inhabitants, it's mandatory for us to implement this area. And we know that it will be difficult because if you have an old car, you will have restrictions to access the old town. And most of the times, the owners of older cars are people with lower incomes. So you are in a way punishing people with lower incomes and making it easier for people with higher incomes. So it's in a way, I don't know if it's fair or not, but if we want to take care of the environment, we have to take decisions like this.
I would just like to continue this topic that I think it's mathematically not that hard to understand what steps do you need to do if you want to make a green transition in terms of cutting the carbon footprint. What is really a challenge is how to make this transition a just transition, where not only wealthy, healthy, successful people who go on conferences and travel a lot and see the world would be on board with the changes that you have, but also people who are living from salary to salary, who are looking at their bills and asking themselves, why should we invest this all money to wind parks? Why should we invest the money into rebuilding streets? Why should we invest money to electric buses, especially when we saw last year that there is also the problem of resilience, where you might have problems with electricity? Why should we do that? I think the biggest challenge is to have those people on board, is to have them involved, and is not to lose these people to the problems that they have in a daily life. And this is now a task that is hard to fulfill using the Excel. Here you have to go to the level of people, and sometimes you may need more sophisticated decisions. You need to create some kind of tailor-made solutions in order to move forward, but not to leave this kind of people behind. And the very problem my colleague just pointed out about worst cars and older cars, polluting cars, being usually a problem for the poorer people. It is also the reality in Tallinn. And I think if we talk about low emission zones, and we'll start talking about it soon, we know that people in the city center, they will say, well, that's not a big problem for us. But people who go to work in the city center will say like, wow, are you crazy? What are you doing? Well, I think in the end, every change where you have to deal with people's habits is the most important, but also the hardest one, because investing money, buying buses, it's not rocket science in the end.
Yeah, and in our case, talking about fair transition, we have some projects related to energy poverty, because for us it has been a priority to make lives easier for these people that are especially vulnerable, and for that we have created some energy offices in which they are provided with advice, but not only that, because people in risk of exclusion, they could be supported by the municipality for these energy poverty issues. We are carrying out some projects related to that because it has been a priority. And one of them are the energy communities that we are trying to develop in the city. And part of the energy that could come from these communities could go for these people in risk of exclusion.
Mm. Yeah, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much. And can you share, Vladimir, maybe a little bit, maybe a few learnings for him, for Ernesto to take with him from the Green
Please.
Capital?
I'm eager to that.
I'm too humbled because I think that actually we as a city must learn from Valencia on how to do a lot of things, and this is why we are also discussing a big visit by the Tallinn delegation to Valencia to learn. So it is hard to give some kind of advice. Maybe what I can say is that I think, again, it's true for any city. When you work in the environment you are used to on a daily basis, I think you start to underestimate the achievements that you have made. And I think it is important to think. I think it's important to think. I see that it's very important to have people who are living in the city on a daily basis also actually understanding how unique is the environment they are and what a great job has been done during the past years. And we don't know how to do that because we struggle with the same problem.
Marketing.
It's about marketing. It's about involvement. It's about, I would say even sharing responsibility and empowering people. But I can't say that we have a good advice and a solution to all the problems. But I see that we have the same challenges we can learn from together.
Yeah, it will be bi-directional learning process. Because for us, it has been an opportunity to compile all the things that we are doing and we have done in the past, and have this compilation of things that are doing our city greener. It has been a really good exercise. So, for example, as I have said before, having previous transformations and the current transformation is a good thing of this list of projects, because we are, as all the cities, we are unique, as Vladimir has said. We have in our township 3 natural parks. The main one is the Albufera Lake. It's a nice landscape that belongs to the municipality of Valencia, with a rice cultivation area. So it's a very special area and a landscape that is vulnerable, and we have to take care especially of it. Apart from that, the city is surrounded by agricultural areas because we have a very rich soil. Our vegetables are really good. So Mediterranean diet is part because of this richness of vegetables and other products from these agricultural areas. And one of the goals and the things that we have tried to have in our city is to have most of the population by 90% of the population with a green area in not more than 300 meters. So walking distance, you should have a green area. If not, we have to do something so as to create one.
Really, really nice examples.
But I think I may have come up with one idea that I can suggest you to learn from as a green capital. You will be having a lot of events that will attract people from all over Europe and maybe even wider. And a lot of them will be coming to Valencia. And I think that what you could do is that you could try to understand as precisely as it is possible what knowledge do you need, what expertise from abroad do you need, because all the events you will be making throughout the green capital would be, the perfect opportunity to get all these people in one place and to get to know what you actually want. I think that usually we sort of underuse this kind of possibilities and we focus on the topics of the events rather to focus on people that we are attracting to our cities. And this is I think if we would be doing the same thing for the second time, then I would think through what do we want to get from this person? What do we want to learn? And then we would maybe design the process a little bit different so that we would, drag more from the people that come to the events of the Green Capital.
Yeah, you mean that it's better not to show off? Oh, so good! Have a look at this.
Exactly.
We are so good, but taking the knowledge from people coming. So it's a very interesting point.
Yeah,
Exactly.
maybe identifying exact needs that you have, maybe capacity gaps that you have within Valencia. And of course, Ernesto, you can talk to Babo and we can help you connect with the right people to attract those people to come. If you say, okay, we really need more knowledge in, I say AI because I know you're starting an AI project coming up.
Yeah.
But in that example, and then finding the specialists to come and really visit during those events.
Yeah,
I think that's a good idea.
In fact, so we are quite used to working networks because this knowledge experience is up to now has worked for us. It's really good. And one of the best examples is the RECI, the Spanish network of Smart City, in which we are collaborating with more than 140 cities, sharing knowledge and so solving doubts. And it's for us, it's a very good example. We are in other groups. For example, we were involved in another group for city platforms. We are coordinating a group at the United Nations level from ITU. For city platforms, EU4SCC, and we are working in different forums in which obviously we are trying to absorb the knowledge from all the cities, lessons learned, failures, and so for us it's really important. So I will take notes of these suggestions that it's very, very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I would like to give you the opportunity to now talk about anything that we didn't yet talk about. I like to give an open floor now to say, okay, this is a topic that the listeners definitely have to know about. Do either of you have something in mind that you really want to get out there?
Well, as you have introduced this concept of artificial intelligence, and now everybody is talking about that, going on with this fairness, we are trying to make it more fair the artificial intelligence concept with a project in which we are involved. We Valencia are the C of one of the three super nodes for artificial intelligence for a smart city in Europe. One will be in Copenhagen, another in Brussels, and the south one will be in Valencia. And we will offer a portfolio of services, not only for our local ecosystem, but for other cities and even countries. And with this, we are trying to control, in a way, this amazing concept of artificial intelligence to have it under control, because if not, so it will be out of our hands.
Really interesting topic to be exploring right
Yeah.
now. Definitely trending. Are you exploring similar topics? I know in Estonia, you're very, I guess, on the forefront of cutting edge technologies these days. I know you have Green Tech Week coming up, for example. I believe that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
And these types of things. Are you exploring those topics as well?
Yes. Well, I cannot say that we have a lot going on with the artificial intelligence, just because this R&D requires, a lot of capacity and a lot of money as well. So we are actually looking forward to the developments that will happen with Valencia, Brussels, and Copenhagen to use the tools and to learn from them. The problem with the Tallinn being a digital city is that it doesn't seem very special to us anymore. And we understand that some of the services that we have, they may seem somewhat unique from the perspective of other cities, but they are not something that surprises our own citizens. This is why we are not maybe very, talking a lot about them. One of the maybe examples of what we are doing now that I can bring is so we are creating a planning tool that allows you not just to recreate the current environment in a city in virtual reality, but also to use this for imagination of how the city or one or other place would look like with different developments, different buildings,
like
and
digital twins.
Digital twins,
simulation with digital twins.
Yes.
It's another concept in which we are working with now.
And what we see here, that it's not only about the buildings themselves, because again, this is not something special in this way, but it is also, for example, about the type of the tree that you choose to plant on a street. And you can see approximately what will this tree look like in 5 years, in 10 years, how much shade will it produce, how will it influence the temperature on the street, how much money you will have to put into maintenance and stuff like that. So this is where we are trying to move with the planning process. And I think the aspect of gamification is also important here. It's not only a tool for architects and urbanists who know what they are doing, but it's also a tool for citizens to wander around, to look at their city from different perspectives, and to maybe play a little bit. And what we are now planning to do with a big road that is going to be reconstructed, I would say, into a street in Tallinn, is that we are planning to use an application called Urbanist AI. Oh, so we have AI. And it is a tool and actually a workshop, which is this kind of maybe a little bit different means of participation in comparison with what we are used to, that allows people to actually co-create how one or other place in the city could look like, and actually see the picture immediately, and then not just tell the decision makers that we want a bicycle lane, we want a tree, we want a playground, but to show that we want a street like this. And I hope that this will also sort of put people to think about the city in different perspective that they do now.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you also have something to share for the open floor, or you want to move on?
I think we can move on, because
Okay.
a lot of things were said.
Okay, perfect. We covered a lot of ground then. So now we get to move on to our fun segment. And this is a new segment for us called What Would You Do?
What would you do? What would you do in the shoes of someone else? What would be the first actions you would take?
And so I want to take a little bit different perspective on this and ask you, what would you do differently 20 years ago if you could go back in time to yourself 20 years ago? Like, what would you do differently with the knowledge that you now have?
So obviously, when you are working in the IT sector, so the progress of the technology in 20 years, you can imagine that it has been amazing. So if with experience, yes, I would apply part of my acquired experience. But with the current means, it would be really good to have been 20 years ago. Well, I think that life experience, it has been really amazing. Obviously, in 20 years, lots of things happen in our lives, obviously. And so I don't know if I would change a lot of things because so life is in that way. Life is so sometimes difficult. But so maybe I could fine tune some things, but not drastical changes.
Mm-hmm.
In our case, I think that it is important to explain maybe two things. 20 years ago, we were sort of a starting democracy that just came out of the communist regime. And in comparison to today, the city owned much more land and property. And it was at that time seen as a burden for the budget. And the city have sold a lot of land. And if we could go back in time, then I think that would be the decision that we should have to make, that we cannot get rid of too much of the public land, because today we see that land shortage for the city is one of the biggest challenges in solving all of these problems that we have today. So this is definitely a step I would take. And another thing, coming out from this kind of like Soviet environment, we know that 20 years ago, less people had private cars than we have today. And now we are basically struggling to get back to where we were with the numbers of cars then. So I think that what we would do, now in Tallinn we have free public transport for the city residents. I think that, and we introduced that 10 years ago. The right thing in an ideal world would be to do that 20 years ago when there were not so much cars, and try to create the simplest public transport infrastructure that is something, like air today. But 20 years ago, I think there were no or almost no bus lanes in Tallinn, for example. So I would do everything in order to avoid this kind of growing of the number of cars, with even stronger promoting of the public transport in the city.
So I focused this in my partial perspective of, but if I talk about the city perspective, so in last 20 years, I think that a lot of things have been correct, right, and others maybe not so convenient. But generally speaking, I think that no huge mistakes have been done from the previous government and the previous of the previous. So some years ago, we focused our activity in big events. For example, we have America's Cup. But some people were against bringing this kind of events. At the end, they have had a good impact on the city, because we recovered the port area for the citizenship, and it has been good. And the Formula One Grand Prix, so huge events. But so then it changed in a way the model of city. But everything that has had at the end a good outcome. So I wouldn't change a lot of things, to be honest.
Yeah, then you end up what is the butterfly effect, right? If you could go back and change things, then a lot of unknown consequences happen. Yeah, exactly. So good. So last question, and it's a question we ask every single guest. It's to you: what is a smart city?
Oh, Well, as the smart city officer, I think that
You can start.
I could say. So it's a city. There are a lot of definitions. I have presented lots of them in different conferences. But so for me, is a city, sustainable city, in which we apply the technology with the goal of improving the quality of life of the citizenship. Because at the end, the technology is not an objective; it's a tool for achieving a more ambitious goal.
Absolutely. Have a different perspective?
Oh, well, I can just agree and say that smart city is not a stupid city. But
Yes.
I think this very idea that technology is not an aim, it's like means of reaching some kind of aims, and the aim is happiness of the citizens. It is that's the ground for all this.
Perfect. So I have many thanks to give now. So first, thank you to Urban Future and Resi for participating in this episode, really for facilitating this episode. And of course, huge thanks to our guests from the respective cities, of course, of Tallinn and Valencia as well, for such an interesting and insightful episode. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, and see you in Tallinn for the Green Tech Week in November.
See you there.
Pleasure.
And to all of our listeners, don't forget you can always create a free account on babel-smartcities.eu to find out more about smart city projects, solutions, implementations, all these cool things happening. And with that, thank you so much. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you at the next stop on the journey to a better urban life.